The silence of the Montana mountains was exactly what my soul craved. After all these years, the house felt too big, too empty. Losing Richard had left a void that no amount of rearranging furniture or joining book clubs could fill. So I'd booked a week at a secluded lodge nestled deep in the Rockies, hoping the crisp mountain air and the quiet solitude would offer some kind of balm. Little did I know the silence wouldn't last long, and the solitude would take a very unexpected turn. The lodge itself was charming, all rustic wood and crackling fireplaces. My cabin was cozy, with a porch that overlooked a stunning vista of pine trees and distant peaks. Just next to my cabin, though, was a slightly larger one, and it wasn't long before I noticed its occupants. 5 men, all around my age, maybe a little older, with that rugged, outdoorsy look that speaks of a life lived fully. They were the kind of men you might see gathered around a campfire sharing stories and a few beers. Lucas, I heard one of them call out, was the one who first caught my eye. He had this intense gaze, like he could see right through you, but in a way that felt intriguing, not unsettling. My first few days were spent hiking, reading, and generally enjoying the peace. But every now and then I'd catch myself glancing over at their cabin, wondering about their stories, their lives. There was a certain energy about them, a camaraderie that was almost palpable. It stirred something within me, a feeling I hadn't recognized in years. A flicker of adventure, a hint of, well, something more. One evening, I was sitting on my porch, wrapped in a soft shawl, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine. I could hear the low murmur of their voices drifting over from the next cabin, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter. I adjusted my shawl, letting it slip a little off my shoulder, enjoying the feel of the cool air on my skin. I knew they could probably see me from their porch, and a tiny part of me wanted them to, especially Lucas. Our eyes had met a couple of times over the past few days, and there was an unspoken acknowledgement, a silent question hanging in the air. As I hummed a familiar tune under my breath, I felt a shift within me. Maybe this trip wasn't just about healing. Maybe it was also about feeling alive again. Over the next day, I found myself more aware of their presence. If I was on a walk, I'd notice them heading out for a hike or returning with fishing rods. Our paths would cross occasionally, and there would be a brief exchange of pleasantries, a nod, a smile. Lucas always held my gaze a little longer, his blue eyes seeming to hold a question I couldn't quite decipher, but definitely felt. There was a subtle flirtation in the air, a dance of unspoken interest that was both exciting and a little nerve-wracking. The lodge had a communal area with a cozy lounge and a fireplace where guests could gather in the evenings. One afternoon, I decided to spend some time there, reading a book by the fire. Not long after I settled in, Lucas walked in, alone this time. He smiled when he saw me and came over to sit in the armchair opposite mine. We started talking about the area, the hiking trails, the wildlife. He was a good conversationalist, easy to talk to, with a dry sense of humor that I found quite charming. As we spoke, I noticed little things, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the slight roughness of his hands when he gestured. There was a comfortable intimacy in our conversation, a feeling like we'd known each other longer than just a few days. Later that evening, back in my cabin, I was unwinding with a glass of local Pinot Noir by the fireplace. The flames danced merrily, casting flickering shadows on the walls. I was feeling a pleasant mix of relaxation and anticipation. The conversation with Lucas had left me with a warm feeling, a sense that something interesting might be brewing. Just as I was getting lost in my thoughts, there was a gentle knock on my door. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it was him. I opened the door to find Lucas standing there, a soft smile on his face. "Avery," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent a little shiver down my spine. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I couldn't resist coming over to talk a little more." I invited him in, and he stepped inside, his presence filling the small cabin in a way that felt surprisingly natural. We talked for a while longer, the conversation flowing effortlessly from travel stories to our favorite books. He was attentive, genuinely interested in what I had to say, and his compliments felt sincere and warm. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere shifted, the laughter softened, the voices lowered, and our gazes lingered a little longer. There were accidental brushes of hands, a shared glance that held a spark of something more than just friendly conversation. The air in the cabin felt charged, the unspoken desires hanging heavy between us. The warmth of the fire seemed to mirror the heat that was building between Lucas and me. We were standing close, the comfortable distance that had separated us earlier now dissolved. His hand had found mine, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. Our conversation had drifted to more personal territory, shared vulnerabilities creating a deeper connection. I found myself drawn to his easygoing nature and the hint of something untamed beneath his charming exterior. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to my lips, and in that moment, the unspoken question from earlier finally found its answer. His kiss was gentle at first, a soft exploration, but it quickly deepened, a rush of warmth and sensation flooding through me. It had been a long time since I'd felt such a spark, such a visceral connection. One kiss led to another, and soon we were wrapped in each other's arms, the years seeming to melt away with each touch. He pulled me closer, his body warm against mine, and I could feel the steady beat of his heart against my chest. Without a word, I took his hand and led him towards the bedroom. The moonlight filtering through the window cast a soft glow on the room as we continued our embrace. Clothes were shed with a sense of urgency and anticipation, landing in soft piles on the floor. The feel of his skin against mine was electric, a long-forgotten sensation that sent shivers down my spine. We lay together, exploring each other's bodies with a tenderness that belied the intensity of our desire. His touch was knowing, confident, and every caress sent waves of pleasure through me. The air was thick with unspoken needs and the quiet rhythm of our breathing. Just as we were reaching a point of no return, lost in the moment, there was a sudden loud knock on the front door. It startled us both, breaking the spell. "Lucas, you in there?" It was Mason's voice, followed by the muffled sounds of the other men. Lucas pulled back slightly, a look of surprise, maybe even a little frustration, on his face. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "They must be wondering where I got to." My initial reaction was a mix of embarrassment and annoyance. But then, a mischievous thought sparked in my mind. This whole trip was about stepping outside my comfort zone, wasn't it? I looked at Lucas, a playful smile forming on my lips. "Well," I said, my voice a little breathless, "are you going to answer it?" He looked at me, a question in his eyes. "Are you sure?" I nodded, my smile widening. "Why not? Let's see what they have to say." He chuckled, shaking his head, but clearly intrigued. He quickly pulled on his pants, and I grabbed my robe, tying it loosely around myself. When he opened the door, the other 4 men, Mason, Logan, Alexander, and Jacob, were standing there, looking a little concerned. "Everything all right, Lucas? We figured you'd be back by now," Mason said, his eyes widening as he caught sight of me standing behind Lucas. A surprised silence hung in the air for a moment before I stepped forward, extending my hand with a warm smile. "Hello, gentlemen. I'm Avery. Lucas was just keeping me company." The men exchanged surprised glances, but they quickly recovered, each offering a polite greeting. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted. The intimate bubble of just Lucas and me now expanded to include the other four. There was a palpable sense of curiosity, a hint of excitement in the air. "Well, since you're all here," I said, my voice laced with a playful invitation, "why don't you come on in? I was just about to open another bottle of wine." And to my surprise, and perhaps not really, they readily accepted. The small cabin suddenly felt a lot more crowded, but the energy was undeniably electric. We gathered in the living room, the initial awkwardness quickly fading away as we shared stories and laughter. There were subtle glances, lingering touches, a sense of shared awareness that transcended mere friendship. As the night deepened, the conversation became more suggestive, filled with double entendres and knowing smiles. I found myself enjoying the attention, the feeling of being desired by these handsome, rugged men. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, and I had a feeling this night was far from over. The rest of the night unfolded in a way I never could have predicted. The initial surprise of the unexpected company soon gave way to a sense of shared adventure and a thrilling undercurrent of desire. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and knowing glances. As the wine continued to pour, the atmosphere became more relaxed, more intimate. There were casual touches, a hand on my shoulder, an arm brushing against mine, each one sending a little spark through me. I found myself drawn to each of them in different ways. Mason had a quiet intensity in his eyes, Logan a playful charm, Alexander a gentle thoughtfulness, and Jacob a rugged, silent strength. Lucas, of course, still held a special pull, being the first to breach my solitude. The dynamic between the six of us was intoxicating, a blend of flirtation, camaraderie, and a shared understanding of the unspoken desires that hung in the air. As the night deepened, the interactions became more sensual. A hand might linger a moment too long on my arm. A whisper in my ear would send shivers down my spine. There were stolen kisses in the shadows of the porch, lingering embraces that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in years, a shedding of the expectations and constraints that had defined my life for so long. This wasn't just about physical attraction. It was about feeling seen, desired, and truly alive again. The next morning I woke up in my bed, the sunlight streaming through the window. A sense of contentment washed over me, mixed with a touch of disbelief at the events of the previous night. The memories were a kaleidoscope of laughter, whispered words, and the warm feeling of being surrounded by attention. I wasn't sure exactly what had happened, or how to define it, but I knew it was something special, something that had awakened a part of me I thought had gone dormant. When I went out onto the porch for my morning coffee, I saw the 5 men gathered by their cabin, just as they had been on my first night. They looked up and smiled as I approached. There was no awkwardness, no pretense, just a shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the night we had all experienced. The rest of my stay at the lodge was different. There was a connection between us now, a bond forged in the unexpected intimacy of that night. We spent time together, hiking, sharing meals, and telling stories around the campfire. There was a lightness in the air, a sense of freedom and possibility. As I packed my bags to leave at the end of the week, I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of gratitude. This solo trip hadn't turned out the way I expected, but it had given me something I hadn't even realized I was missing. I had come seeking peace and quiet, and I had found that. But I had also found something more, a renewed sense of self, a feeling of being desirable, and the thrilling realization that life, at any age, can still hold unexpected adventures. As I drove away from the lodge, the image of the 5 men waving goodbye in my rearview mirror lingered in my mind. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I was leaving Montana with a heart that felt a little lighter, a little bolder, and a lot more alive. A night like that, it certainly makes you think. Have you ever had an unexpected encounter that completely changed your perspective? What would you have done in Avery's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Until then, take care. Take